Hey friends, and welcome to the Revive Everyday Living podcast.
We are your hosts, Courtney
and Sharaya, and we're talking everything from life situations, relationships,
friendships, and parenting,
and all our adventures.
So stick around because
we are getting real.
Happy Friday!
Happy Friday, everybody.
Whoop, whoop.
Hey, y'all. We are so excited that you guys are taking your Friday out to spend with us today. We are talking about trust the process and enjoy the journey.
I have to admit, this is not an episode that I am very excited to do because it's hard for me to trust the process. I am the type of person that I like to see immediate results. I like to do a lot of DIY projects, and when I'm doing them, it's hard for me to trust the process because I want to see the project done. I want it done all in one day, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And I'm having to learn that being patient is actually an act of faith, because faith is believing for something that you haven't seen yet. So everything that we are having to go through, the process that we're having to walk out, wait out, is building our faith to know that something bigger and better is coming.
So, Courtney, you said that you're not big on patience, right? A lot of the world would say the same. And I told you earlier that I thought patience was a learned behavior, that it was a virtue that we all had to learn and not like a virtue that we were given and you just like, voila, you're patient. It was just like you have to learn it. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not a good student.
Besides not being a good student, do you agree?
I have to agree because the only way to learn patience is to go through a process where patience is required. So yes, I will agree.
So I like the process a little bit sometimes, only the processes that I want to pick. I don't always like God's process. But what do you think are some things that we must have in order to realistically trust the process? So like for real, in real life, not in our holy life, and like in real life. What are some things that you need to realistically trust the process and then enjoy the journey?
I'm going to have to go with experience for 100.
I'm going with sweet tea for 200.
Sweet tea and experience. And y'all, that's faith. Enjoying the journey. That's all it takes. Experience and sweet tea.
I mean, you're out here with everything you need. You get you a Yeti, put some ice in there, fill it up. Baby, you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready for the journey.
I'm ready.
Get your camera, take some pictures.
Yeah.
And let's get to enjoying.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. Last week's episode, we talked about trusting GPS and how is it that we can trust our GPS, but we have a more difficult time in trusting God. And I talked about how my GPS isn't as good as your GPS because mine likes to take me on all these back roads. But what I've learned in all of that is enjoying the journey of being lost. If that GPS took me from A to B and nowhere on these back roads or farm to market road, I would have never experienced seeing the things that I've seen in these small towns off the beaten path. So that for me is kind of an example that I have to use for myself when I'm in a process that I'm not enjoying or I don't have much patience for, and just sitting back and saying, Courtney, look around, enjoy the journey, because the process is required.
Yep, I agree. So experience is a great reminder for me.
Yeah.
When I remember like what God has brought me through, then I'm like, oh, okay. Like he has me, and I'm even more confident that he has me because I'm in a new level in him that I'm like, I know people say this is bad, but it really does something to my spirit when I need it. When I'm like, I have an account with you and my account is about 250 million. So it reminds me that I'm in a new level with you. Like when I went through something similar, I was at about 100,000. Now I have some money in this bank with Christ. And so I'm more confident in him when I remind myself of that. So my realistic is sweet tea and to remind myself of my history with him.
Yes. Let me ask you, how many times have you gone through the process, didn't like the process, but after the process was over and you arrived at your destination, did you look back and say, it wasn't that bad? I learned something through the process. I was built in the process. My faith was leveled up in the process. And looking back, I needed that process to get to the blessing.
Well, I always think it's that bad. Like, I'm always dramatic about it with
when
Jesus.
You're going through it.
When I'm going through it. But when I'm done, I'm still like, you didn't have to do me like that. You didn't have to do me like that. But I'm going to forgive you. But yes, I do always say, I do always look at it and say it was a needed experience, something I gathered from there. I leveled up in some spaces. So I am very good about reflecting.
Yeah.
Reflecting on how good he is. But that's a part of the experience. And I think that journaling and writing those things down, that's your go-to spot. Like you know where to go back and say, okay, you got this.
Right.
Like, you lost your job before. You can do this. God's kept you before. Now, how do we put that level of faith that you had then on steroids and call on him for the now?
Right. I think that everything that we go through is always preparation for what we actually asked God for. Our blessing always comes in a process. If you think about farmers, when they plant a crop, they don't dig it up to see if it's growing. They have to trust the process of growth to get to reap the harvest. So just like us, we have to trust the process, even if we don't like it, even when we don't see what the process is doing to us, just to know the end result, we are going to reap a blessing, a harvest in our lives.
Courtney, I have a question for you.
Okay.
It's a for real one.
For real?
A serious one.
Okay.
So how do we trust ourselves during the time that we evolve in the midst of the process? And how does our faith evolve? Does our faith evolve during a process or an experience?
That is a for real question. Tell me one more time. Off the record.
So how do we trust ourselves during evolution? Like when we are evolving, how did our faith evolve?
I think sometimes the trust in myself is wavering, just to be honest. There are days where I have very low trust in myself and I don't think the process is doing any good for me. And then there are days where I have to sit back, remember the journey is for a purpose. Remember the testimonies that I've had in my own personal life have always been for my good. The processes I've already been through have always been for my good, and simply focus on that. And I think my faith and my trust in God during the process was also something that wavered, because it's hard sometimes to see God's hand in things when you are struggling or when you're going through an unwanted process or pruning. It hurts. It hurts sometimes when you're disappointed in certain things that didn't work out. It hurts sometimes when people have hurt you, when people are removed from your life because of a process. And so trusting and having faith that God is doing something in the midst of that process honestly has been a journey in itself. and always having to realize that Scripture tells us that God's plans for us are always good.
Always good. Always going to prosper us. I love His perfect will for us. And I think that sometimes during these moments, sometimes we lose focus and we lose sight of we have to give ourselves more grace than we give others. And in this whole process, this whole experience with God. And I found, which I talk a lot about my personal journey, this self-discovery of who I am, right? And who has God called me to be? And I feel like that as I journeyed in self-discovery and I really got a sense of who I am, I got a sense of how to love me in those moments. And during that time is where I realized that it's okay to not trust. It's okay to feel like I am disappointed or I'm not. I don't want to say I'm not enough because I know that I'm enough, but it's okay to have the feeling.
Right.
Right? It's not okay to act on the feeling, but it's okay to have the feeling. And it's even better when you invite Him into that feeling and into that personal experience. That's what increased my faith in not only myself and my ability to hear Him, but in Him, because He showed up in the moment of my inadequate experience and in the time that I said, God, I am not enough. He showed up then, and then that increased my faith in Him and in my faith in God. So I do believe that each experience and each journey, it really levels you up in faith because He reveals a new side of Himself to us. Like in each moment for my life, He has done that.
Yeah.
Where is the real change? Once we go through a process, do we change? Or do we go through a process and we say, whew, I made it. And you go right back to your ways.
To your old ways. Yeah. I think that is something that we need to learn not to do, or else we're going to go through the entire process all over again.
So if you don't change in your process, right? If you go through a process, you don't change. Did you really enjoy it?
And did you really learn from it? Were you really built from it?
Right. So if I enjoy something, right, I want to have it again. So if I enjoy my journey, am I enjoying the journey to have the journey again? Or am I enjoying the journey to have more of Him again?
Yeah, when we put Him into our journey is when the journey becomes enjoyable.
This whole little thing of I have to enjoy it, so that I went through a phase where I didn't want to enjoy the process because I didn't want to experience the process again, right? And that goes to mindset, because my mind was, if I enjoy it, He's going to keep doing the same old thing to me. And not that God was doing a thing, but just the experiences that were happening were going to continue to happen, because if I sit back and enjoy it, it's like I want it all over again. Like your favorite steak. You're like, ooh, I love Perry's Steakhouse because on Fridays they have the pork chop, and I go back and I want the pork chop the same way that it was when I had it the Friday before, right? So when you enjoy the journey of your process, are you enjoying for that same purpose? How does our mind have to be? What is our mindset? Or when we find ourselves in the middle of a journey, in the middle of a process with God, what is our mindset going to be? How do we shift when we're in the middle?
I don't think that we are necessarily saying that you have to enjoy the process, the actual pruning, because the pruning of it hurts. But the journey to get to your blessing, the journey to get to your harvest, the journey to see your prayers answered is the part that we need to enjoy. So enjoying being with God, seeing the positive side of the journey, not sitting back and saying, why me? Why am I having to go through this? Why did He leave me? Why did I lose my job? Constantly sitting and whining and being negative in the situation is not allowing yourself to open your eyes and see the big picture of what God is doing in the journey and process.
So give me 3 things that you do, personal, that you do that help you enjoy the journey.
sitting back and seeing that my character is being built through it, sitting back and remembering the things that God has done in my life in past situations and how he's blessed me through the journey of the pruning and the processing, and being grateful that he has never left me or forsaken me when I have whined, when I have complained, when I've been like, God, you aren't there, you aren't doing anything, where are you? And yet he still remains faithful to me. Being grateful of his presence. What about you?
I make memories in the process. That's how I enjoy it, is like when I can create a memory. So things may not be the way that I intended on being, but I'm making a memory. Good example, snow. I have never seen snow fall before, right? Mm-hmm. But the rest of, like, all of Texas was greatly impacted by it, but I enjoyed the experience. It was like that journey of the whole week of snow and freezing cold and all of that power outage and no water, all of that was happening. It was like I was making memories. The way I made memories the way I made memories was I put on my coat, put on my scarf, I got my gloves, I walked my neighborhood, and I was like,
your neighbor's got a daily fashion show.
Yes, I changed about 3 times a day, all 4 days, walked up and down my neighborhood because it was like, I am going to enjoy this experience. Like this process, I'm enjoying this journey. I'm enjoying this experience. And right. I think that when it happens in life, you have to train yourself to find a space where you can say, okay, all of San Antonio is shut down. Mm-hmm. How are you going to enjoy this? Because you're going to be locked up in the house. You're not really enjoying the experience. Exactly. So when life is hitting you hard, for me, depression was my go-to. When life hit me hard, mm-hmm. it was close the blinds, turn the lights out. I'm not coming out of my room. Life has hit me. But what do you have to do? What do you need to do in order to enjoy that journey, right? Life is still going to hit you the same way. Mm-hmm. But you get up, you put your red lipsticks on, you get a cute pair of pumps.
What about if they're men?
If they're men, you put a tie on, you throw some slacks and put those Stacey Adams and go walk the neighborhood, okay? No,
when everything is shut down, you walk your hood.
You walk the hood. But really, and when things are happening, we have to realize that what our response was in the last season can't be the response of this season, right?
Right.
That level up we've been talking about all day long is level up, level up, level up.
Right.
So even my reaction to the process has to level up.
That's so good. I think so many times that we ask God to bless us and then we expect to tell him how to bless us. Forget the process. I just want the benefits. And sometimes there's a process to in the blessing. We ask God to bless us with another stream of income. And you've been having to go through a process of learning. You've gone back to school to get certified. If I'm asking God to bless me with a husband, then there's a process of learning how to be a wife before my husband comes along. And if we skip the process, then we skip the lesson. If we skip the learning, we skip the building it takes to sustain a blessing. Until next time, keep it real. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Revive Everyday Living.
Be sure to subscribe, comment, and share.
Also, follow us on Instagram and Facebook.